to bring you another edition of Kelly's Eye with
The Odd Pod.
Odd Pod. Hello, it's Odd Pod time again, and we delve back into the archives once again to bring you another edition of Kelly's Eye with the late great David Collister and historian Peter Kelly. This was first recorded in 1992 and broadcast on the station in the same year. Here's Peter and David battling with the traffic noise and looking at a bell.
Peter, what's Kelly's Eye looking at today?
Something a little bit different today, David. I'm looking at a bell.
It's a bit out of reach. We can't actually ring it, unfortunately.
No,
mind you, if we did, we'd be in trouble, perhaps.
Well, we probably would at this time of night. Yes. It's painted green. No doubt it's possibly brass underneath all that. It's got a rather nice metalwork frame projecting it out from the gable of a property, and the rope is hanging down. If we had very long arms, we could actually reach it. But I think, as you say, David, we better just leave it silent.
It is rung occasionally, though.
Yes, as far as I know, I think it's on New Year's Eve. At least I've been out here on New Year's Eve and heard it ring in the New Year on one occasion. In fact, that was the occasion when it was sort of put back into operation, having been greased and released and a new rope put onto it.
Many people from that description will know that we're in Union Mills and we're at the Central Store, what is now called the Central Stores. But I'm sure it wasn't the Central Stores originally.
No, it wasn't. It appears, in fact, to have been the office for the mills. Of course, again, people might wonder why it's called Union Mills, and that's because there was a mill here, a corn mill here, going back a long time, of course, and just before the turn into the 19th century, in fact, a gentleman, I believe, by the name of Kelly, decided, having bought the mill, to build another mill alongside, and you ended up with both a woolen mill and a corn mill here, and it was the union of the two, if you like, which gave the name Union Mills to the district. The mill grew, and there were a few fires and rebuilds, and it was quite a substantial set of buildings here, which many people remember. They've only been demolished about 30 years now.
Yes.
Sounds a long time, or does it? They were across the road, and of course they projected out into what is now the road, and the little bit of wall that's left, of course, was the rear wall, not the front wall of the buildings. But this was the office to the mill. It was quite a complex, and of course employed practically everyone living in the neighbourhood, and they came a little bit further to come here to work. And the bell was on the side, primarily, I suppose, equivalent of a factory hooter, in so much that they rang it for the shifts.
Called the men to work.
Called the men to work, and then at the lunch break, and so on. And of course, there are other features around here. There's actually a stone across the road, carved sandstone, to say this was the site of the old mill. That was put up in Heritage Year 1986, using a piece of sandstone that actually came from the Clothworkers' School in Peel. But alongside us, just down from the bell, is the present Methodist chapel or church, and this field was known as the tenter field. Now, you've heard the expression being on tenter hooks, not tender hooks, but tenter hooks.
Tenter hooks, yes.
Well, tenter hooks was used in the making of cloth, when the cloth was made and dyed and so on. There were wooden frames, long frames, with iron hooks on, tenter hooks, and the cloth was actually hung over the hooks while the cloth itself dried. And I think there may just be an example of those left out at St John's. Certainly was there a few years ago. And anyway, this site of the chapel, built in 1930, was where the cloth from across the road was hung out. And so several of the cottages, of course, alongside were occupied by mill workers, and of course the mill owners lived in the larger houses just up the top of the village.
You think of a place like this as perhaps unchanging, but in fact, in 30 or 40 years, it's changed quite a lot.
It has changed quite a lot. I mean, there's a fairly modern canopy over a garage, but if you look in between the modern bits and the demolished bits, you will find quite a bit of antiquity. Cottages on the right heading out to Peel, very good example of their type. And on the opposite side, I believe there's a date stone, in fact, on the cottage next to the garage, worth looking at next time you're passing through.
The Odd Pod.